Hi, everyone. I want to thank the wonderful folks here at Xposure in Sharjah for allowing us to do a projection event here on one of their sound stages. So that's really, really terrific. The crew has been great to us all week. And today we're with Talia Greis, who is from Australia, who's a wonderful, wonderful underwater photographer and advocate for watching and caring about the wonderful creatures below the ocean water there. And I'm thrilled to have you. So tell me, how did we get started?
With underwater photography.
Yes.
So growing up in Sydney, obviously we're on the coast. We have some of the world's most beautiful beaches right on our doorstep. So from a very young age, I grew up surfing, taking a splash before school. So just constantly in the water.
So you grew up in the water?
Pretty much, yeah.
Right.
I mean, I think everyone from Australia
does, right?
pretty much does. We have that privilege of having that on our doorstep. But I think diving for me began, actually, my ex-boyfriend actually got me my dive ticket, so at least one great thing came out of that. And I just, started as a holiday diver. Every time I go away, we just do a dive or two. Right. And then
a dive or two. So is that with tanks?
Yeah, so scuba tanks, the whole setup and everything.
Yeah.
And then basically there's this huge dive community in Sydney, which I had no idea about, and very quickly got involved with it. And nowadays I'm in the water every Saturday, every Sunday, which is great. And the photography aspect from it actually came when I took a trip to Western Australia to a beautiful place called Ningaloo Reef. And I bought the latest and greatest GoPro, and I was so excited to take all of these great photos and bring it home and show my friends. And as you can imagine, I was quite disappointed with what I was capturing, because it just wasn't bringing to the surface what I was witnessing. So when I got home, I jumped in the deep end, so to speak, and bought my first camera, and that's my beginning of my journey.
And were you shooting before we got into the water? Were you doing
No.
So the water came and then the photography came after?
Correct. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because when I look at the settings and the techniques used on above the water, if you learn this basic foundation of photography above the water, you kind of have to forget everything you learn when you go underwater and
Why is that?
Different shutter speeds, different lighting techniques. It's just a completely different world. So I actually find myself quite lucky that I learned underwater, because I didn't have to unlearn everything. Right.
And was there anything in particular that, or a person photographer or an event that said, this is what I want to do. This is where I love it.
I mean, one of my all-time favorite photographers is Paul Nicklin. Fantastic wildlife photographer. Watching his journey, throughout the world just really inspired me.
Right.
There's also incredible underwater photographers, like Alex Mustard, for example. Right. Interesting story about that. His books was actually one of the first books I read to learn about underwater photography. And it actually came full circle later when, last year or the year before, I actually won Underwater Photographer of the Year for the macro category, which is one of the photos we'll go through later. But he was the judge, or one of the judges, for that particular competition. So for him to actually select my shot it really just brought things around for me full circle.
Right. And so that's sort of an adrenaline shot. I'm good enough, and this is where I want to be.
Yeah, it's almost like my icon thinks I'm good enough. It just lit a fire.
Right. So tell me about this shot.
So this shot is of a leafy sea dragon, which, very, very rare creature. You really only find them in certain parts of the world in Australia, actually. So this particular shot was taken in South Australia, which is about an hour and a half flight from where I live. And it was taken at Rapid Bay, which is basically a very, very long jetty that goes out into the middle of the ocean. And, as you're going out, you really feel like you're at the mercy of the ocean. And down that way, there's great white sharks, and all these great predators. So you're kind of on your toes down there. And the thing about the shot is they seem like they stand out so well against their background, but the fact is, without lighting, they blend in so well. So I mean, these creatures...
Which is a survival instinct, right?
100%. These creatures are maybe, they're not small, they're maybe about this big. But without lighting, you can just cruise on over them and not even see them. And the thing about these creatures is their eyes move independent of each other, so to get a shot of them looking at you straight on, symmetrical, eyes looking at you, both of them, it's actually quite hard to do. So when I took this shot, I was actually screaming through my regulator.
Is that right?
I was so happy to get it.
So, like people above ground, we have our scouts and our handlers, as if to say, we're going and documenting the Ukraine-Russian war, and we need someone who can translate.
Sure.
In the water space, is there someone local that says, I know where these fish are?
There's always local knowledge, but the thing is everyone wants to keep it a secret because they want to keep it preserved and for themselves sometimes. A lot of photographers, if they know where to shoot, they're not going to go and tell you because they want that shot for themselves.
Understand.
Which is, I do that sometimes.
Right.
But there are certain hints and tips, and you get to know locals, where to find them. But like I said, trying to find a creature like this, when you look at it, it seems like it's going to stand out like a sore thumb, but actually they're incredibly hard to find. On this particular trip, I actually found not only sub-adults, which are a lot smaller, but also babies, which are about, a couple centimeters large. So your eyes also learn to adjust. Once your brain understands what you're looking at, it's a lot easier to spot them going forward.
And just to get back to my question there do you recognize when you get to this town, this village, that guy, that woman, she knows where the treasures are? Is there any like a local lore? You've got to meet somebody behind this wall, that knows all the secrets. Is there sort of that community as well? There
is, but you sort of have to be really embedded in the dive community. Not just on a local level, but also, on a countrywide level, basically. Right. So before I went to South Australia, I reached out to a few people in the area who live there. They told me to go and visit this one guy who fills tanks, and we just happened to get along really well, and from there he let loose on all his tips. So
is that right?
It's just about, approaching people, seeing how they are, knowing people, and obviously through photography you get your name out there, and then people know who you are and trust you.
Go next. So is winning this Global Focus Project Award, like when you go back home, is it acknowledged like, nice job? And do you share that emotionally with this person and that person for, working with you and guiding you or pushing you to, be there?
No, 100%. Just going back to the first photo that we went through, being part of Xposure is such a huge international honor. And when I was able to share the fact that I'd been exhibited here for this particular photo as part of a series, the guy who actually showed me where to find this creature was so privileged and honored to almost be a part of it, even though he's not here. So the reach of this festival is so grand, and I think that it reaches so many different people in so many different levels.
Yeah, so is that dealt with on a social media platform? I've won, I'm going, and then, all of your contacts, and do you think that more of these little secrets will come out because you're now at another level?
Look, I do have a lot of people now approaching me. Obviously social media is, everyone has it nowadays, and Xposure, obviously I share all of the workspaces and my work and other people's work through there. So, yes, secrets do come out. I suppose I have a lot of people contacting me now asking where I've taken this shot, where do I find it, who do I reach out to?
So now you're the person.
Well, I don't like to think so. I hope not.
No, but you're the person with some of the secrets.
I am, but
some of the nuggets.
I do try and keep it, as quiet as possible. Just again, going back to this particular creature, they're so vulnerable in the water that, in a sense, I kind of have a duty not to tell the masses where to find them, because they have this internal, I suppose, BCD, which is the jacket that scuba divers wear to sort of insert air in to bring them up. But they have a the bladder, and essentially the higher they go, their bladder fills, and if they get stressed, they'll try and shoot to the surface, and there'll be a point where they actually can't bring themselves down. So a lot of photographers, they do tend to crowd these creatures and stress them out, and as a photographer, the last thing you want is to endanger wildlife like this, especially endangered creatures. So I think it's kind of my responsibility not to talk about it too much. So
that's a perfect term. Your responsibility, right?
100%.
And you have to take that real seriously. And do not go back to the original slide.
I won't.
Again.
I promise.
So as you start this journey, where does advocacy fall into this of I want to protect the water, and how do you start to garnish the knowledge of these things, like scaring them and they go to the water and they can never get down again? Does that just come through osmosis, or is that your responsibility to know these things and to research things? Because for us looking at beautiful shot, she just went underwater, we don't know that you have to prevent this and don't let them get up to the water. How do you garnish that knowledge?
I mean, I think photography is a really great way to do this, actually. By posting on social media, for example, Instagram, when I put my posts out there of creatures like that, or of, green turtles, I think it's also important to teach my viewers and my audience about them, and their vulnerability, if they're threatened, the struggles they're facing, as well as showing their beauty to sort of show both sides of the scale. But I think everyone should have a responsibility before getting in the water, going to a different country. I think we within ourselves have a responsibility to do our own research, but as a photographer, I use it as almost an educational tool as well, because obviously not everyone hops in the water and dives with turtles or leafy sea dragons. So as a medium, photography is very important as far as teaching.
Right. So tell us.
So this photo was taken in a beautiful island called Lady Elliot Island, which is in far north Queensland. It's one of those gems that has sort of remained a secret till recently, where I think it was named one of the top 10 places to visit by Lonely Planet, so God knows what's going to happen going forward. But basically they only allow, I think, between 100 and 120 people to go to the island at a time. They sort of try and champion conservation, ecotourism, and this particular photo was taken in the lagoon. So there's two sides of the island you can hop in the water. The one side is just open ocean, where you can see manta rays, tiger sharks, you're basically exposed to the elements. But at low tide, what actually happens is hundreds of green turtles actually come into the lagoon for shelter, for cleaning, to socialize, to mate. And I just happened to be very lucky to capture this shot at sunset, I think it was. And it was just, because it's so shallow, you get that beautiful natural light coming through, hitting the turtle, and they just have such personalities.
And what's the size span that we look at here?
They can span anywhere, I suppose, from like half a meter to a meter from arm to arm, so they're quite big. But green turtles for me are probably the most beautiful of the turtle species. They're just absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's interesting. You can go to the next one. It's something whenever we do projections, I always yell at the photographer when they say I got lucky. Because it's not, no piece of it is luck. I mean, where the sun is coming in. Yeah. You're a pro, and so we can't use the word luck.
Well, but also I think as someone like myself who's in the water so much, and photographers in general who put themselves out into the field, you make your own luck. It's not about luck.
That's exactly the point.
100%.
And there's no difference between any shot in any medium and any content about getting it right.
Yeah.
Right. You know what to do. You know what not to do.
100%.
Right. So tell us. Oh, and do you name any of these fish, just for yourself?
I do. So
you do? Okay.
This particular photo is quite funny. So the actual species is called gobbleguts.
Gobbleguts.
I kid you not. And this particular fish, this particular shot, I've actually called caviar. I was fortunate enough to win the silver medal in Nature TTL's Nature Photographer of the Year for this one. Basically, you can only capture this moment happening at night. The thing that most people don't know is this fish is actually only about that big.
Is that right?
Big ones are that big.
Wow.
And at night, what they actually do is they show their eggs. This is just, hundreds.
And for what reason?
I think that they're nocturnal creatures, so they come out at night. That's where they can attempt to feed. So when I was reading about this creature, what I found was interesting was they can actually feed while holding the eggs in their mouth. They just have to shift it around. They have a particular anatomical piece that sits at the back of their throat that sort of tries and holds the eggs there while they feed, but they shuffle the eggs round. They come out at night. They open their mouth to adjust the eggs.
Right.
And I kind of want to say I did get lucky with the shot, just because to get a symmetrical, bang-on shot with this particular species is very difficult.
Yeah, but you're in the water for a certain period of time.
Hours.
You've traveled to that space.
Sure.
And so do you travel, when we see the different images that you have you traveled to go to that place to get that fish, or do you go to a place where I know there's exotic fish?
No, so every single photo that you see, I have gone to take a photo of this particular species. So for this one, I'm fortunate enough to have this dive site on my backyard. It's
Right.
a place called Clifton Gardens. It's a pier where a lot of fishermen go. It's full of trash. They throw all their rubbish and fish heads in the water. It's got fishing nets everywhere. It's absolutely disgusting, but actually it attracts a huge amount of macro marine life. So, a lot of locals actually refer to Clifton as like the mecca of macro diving for Australia.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, I went on a night dive. I hopped in the water at, 9 p.m., stayed till about midnight, just snapping away at gobbleguts, and I just managed to get this shot.
Yeah, that's a great shot. So, okay. Yeah. So, is the community, your family, everyone totally behind you and encouraging you? That must be really, a wonderful thing for your family, your friends, to see the successes that you've garnished over time.
Yeah, no, they're incredibly supportive. My mum was actually the first one who sort of saw potential and interest in my creativity, and she actually helped me buy my first camera, which was a Sony RX100 point and shoot. Which, as a land camera, it's not such a great expense, but when you look at underwater photography as a whole setup, it was too much for me to afford, but she really did help me financially with that. As far as the community, we're all so supportive and close.
Yeah.
There's an online presence. There's a sort of diving community presence. We get together for breakfast after diving, drinks after we've filled our tanks, and everyone's very supportive in the underwater photography world as well. I think we feed off each other's creativity, feedback. If a shot's if I'm not sure about a shot, I'll approach certain people and they'll give me honest feedback. If it's no good, they'll tell me to my face, which I really appreciate, because when a shot's good, they'll let me know. Right.
And do you see now a change in how you're perceived with your success?
Definitely. 100%. It's I almost feel like I have imposter syndrome, especially being at Xposure and talking to icons like Angela Scott, for example. It's just absolutely crazy. But I definitely think in the diving world there's certain key figures that when I first started I really looked up to them, and now they'll come up to me and congratulate me on certain works, and it's incredibly humbling.
Yeah, that's sort of a beautiful thing that happens with success, right?
Definitely.
And part of that is it's your responsibility to absorb that, right?
Yeah.
I've made it. Like, this didn't happen because my parents or this or that. It happened because I've secured these incredible images.
Yeah.
So tell me about this one.
So this is a blenny. They're very common, again, taken at Clifton Gardens where the gobbleguts was shot, but during the day. And I actually found this blenny at the very end of my dive on a Saturday, and I saw this snorkel. I saw it in the snorkel, and he went in, and I waited, and I was running out of air in my tank, and he wasn't coming out, so I decided, okay, I'll leave it and I'll come back tomorrow. And my mission today is to sit for the entire 2 hours and just observe. So I came back the next day. Thankfully, the snorkel was still there. And I literally sat for about 2 hours and just watched its movements. It'd do this
And
fun...
shooting all along?
Sorry?
As you're sitting there for the 2 hours, you're shooting all along, and then it just happens?
Well, so I'm not one of these people who goes down and just snap. So what I do is I go down and I'll just analyze and observe for a while, because I think it's really important to understand the creature before you just, paparazzi it away. So I went down and I watched it for a bit, and it did this strange little dance where it would go in, I suppose it would clean its house, which is the discarded snorkel, and then it would come out and it would go along the grass, and then it would sit as you see it now and peer out, and then it would do the same thing. And I just found my moment where it peered out and I suppose showed its vulnerability in its home, and I tried to take it from an angle where, I tried to appear like you're looking at it as a piece of seagrass looking up. But I think this was a really important photo to take, because I found it so ironic that, people like myself, divers, snorkelers, we love the ocean. We go into the ocean to observe and enjoy and appreciate it. And someone's just, discarded, a piece that they took in with them, left it there, that they need to breathe. They've just dropped it on the ocean floor and left. And I think it also shows the, I suppose, creatures, they'll just adapt to anything. So even though with Clifton Gardens, you've got discarded bottles, discarded snorkels, discarded trash, and these creatures just adapt, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's a survival instinct. And speaking of that, do you always go alone, or do you go with someone else? I mean, does the location determine this is a little bit more dangerous than other places? How does that work?
So look, it's the golden rule in diving that you should never dive alone. You should always have a buddy. The thing is, as an underwater photographer, no one wants to dive with me if they're not taking photos, because like I said, sometimes I'll go and I'll sit on something for 2 hours and I won't move. So ideally, I want a buddy. If I can't get one, then I'll choose a site that's got a bit of protection, so that I'm not exposed to the elements. I still wouldn't recommend it to anyone because it's not safe practice.
Right.
This particular shot, I did go alone because I'm really only sitting in about 4 meters of water in a shark netted area.
Okay.
So it's sort of like an ocean pool where it's quite protected.
Okay.
But yeah, generally you don't want to be doing this sort of thing by yourself.
So when you do have to go by yourself, do you let your folks know, friends know, I'm going here at this time? So there's sort of like, we know where you are generally.
100%. So I'll let them know when I'm getting in, and I tell them if you don't hear from me by a certain time, then maybe you worry.
Yeah, maybe start to worry.
But generally I try not to dive alone. It's just not good practice.
Right. Okay. And can you, or would a situation be where you have someone who's maybe into the Zen world that can sit and not interested in taking photographs, just watching? I mean, are there situations like that?
I don't think anyone wants to sit in one spot underwater, freezing cold for 2 hours. But I do have certain dive buddies who are also very much into photography, and they completely understand because they do the same thing. So what we'll do is we'll hop in the water. I'll find a subject. They'll go in the general vicinity of the area where we can see each other. They'll find their own subject. I mean, Sydney is it's just such a healthy oceanic world there. I think in Sydney Harbour alone, we have more species of fish than the entire Mediterranean.
Wow.
If you can, that's just mind-blowing, right?
Yeah,
there's no way that we're going to hop in the water and not find something. So there's definitely buddies that I choose to go with, but we just keep a distance and do our own thing.
Right. Yeah, and that must be more comforting for everyone involved, right?
Definitely, because, at the back of your head, you're also in the ocean and things happen. I mean, not just, things that can be caused by humans. Like a lot of the time you're in the harbour, there's boat traffic, you hear it passing by above your head, and I often think, what happens if they drop an anchor on me? What do you do?
Yeah.
But then you also have the other element of, well, what if a shark comes by? And it happens, but I mean, what if a great white comes by or something like that? It's always in the back of your head. So
tell me about this image.
So this is taken in Yongala Wreck, which is, again, far north Queensland, just off Townsville. And it is a wreck that was not sunk intentionally. It wasn't scuttled. It was actually a proper shipwreck. I think it was in the early 1900s. And you're actually not allowed to penetrate the wreck enter the wreck. That's what we call entering the wreck, penetrating the wreck. You're actually not allowed to because it's actually a graveyard.
Right.
So if you do enter the wreck, you'll actually come across bones and remains and stuff.
Right.
But the special thing about this wreck is it's just attracted so much marine life. I think over time it's almost become like an artificial reef.
Right.
So for me, diving on this wreck, you can't really see it in this photo, but on the top of this wreck, it's absolutely covered in healthy coral. It's beautiful to see huge schooling fish. This is a photo of a Queensland grouper. They're about 2 meters large, really big, about the size of a small shark. And this particular one loves to sit at the stern of the ship, or bow, I forget, bow of the ship. That's sort of where he lives, and it's a really dramatic sort of scene because you've got, if you look in the top right, you've got these huge schooling fish. You've got this beautiful pattern of glass fish just sort of flowing over him, and a lot of people think that black ball in the background is actually a ball of fish, but it's actually the wreck itself.
Is that right? Okay.
And yeah, so it's for anyone who hasn't been there, I'd highly recommend going there. It's one of the greats of diving.
So in a situation like this, that fish sort of lives there.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so you're there for 2 hours. It's going to come back around.
Yeah.
And you wait. I mean, that's I guess for for the layman, like I don't really imagine fish living in like a house. I mean, that's the way you describe it.
Yeah.
Like Betsy is coming back.
Yeah. No, he's famous for living there, I suppose. There's a hole in the stern of the wreck, and I suppose he just sort of lingers around there, and then he'll come out. But that area of the wreck is where you'll find him. So anyone who goes there, you know where to find him.
Right. And so anyone that goes there, is there a little bit of competition? Like you go under the water and so and so was there already, and then you just go somewhere else? If you see another photographer in that space before you, you just go somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, you sort of, there's this sort of etiquette with underwater diving.
Yeah, tell me about etiquette.
I mean, a lot of people don't know about it, but I think it's super important. You need to give space. When I'm sitting on a creature, I don't want people hovering over me, looking at what I'm doing. I find a lot of people just sort of jump in and take over the situation sometimes.
Is that right?
You need that element of respect and space, which I'm sure is applicable to topside photography and general nature photography.
And is there a signal like, this or something else a little bit more graphic? Like
sometimes I shoo them away or tell them to stop. I'm sure there's other signals that I can't do here. But yeah, etiquette's extremely important, and not enough people know about it. But certainly if I see someone photographing this fish, the wreck's huge. It's about 120 meters long, and the ocean's a wide space, so there's absolutely no reason to be crowding one another. So if I see someone here, I'll go to the other end of the wreck, and then before I go up, I'll make my way around the back again.
And so in a situation like that, will my flash affect you?
Flash, no. If you're doing video, underwater video, flash can be incredibly destructive, I suppose, to video content.
Okay.
But with regards to photographer, no, I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah, go. So tell us, wow.
So this is in Whyalla, which again is another amazing dive site in South Australia. South Australia is just an unbelievable place to go diving, but every winter hundreds of thousands of giant cuttlefish flock to this particular place called Whyalla. It's a very shallow dive area, and it's huge. I mean, it spans kilometers, so there's no need to crowd each other here. But and you've got hundreds of these giant cuttlefish that essentially come in to find a mate. And giant cuttlefish, they don't have a huge lifespan. So, I mean, when you see hundreds of thousands of these, they're generally about this big. If you see the larger ones, it actually means that they failed at finding a mate the year before or the year before. But yeah,
And why do they get bigger?
Because from what I understand, once they mate and give birth, they die. Their life cycle is quite similar to an octopus in that sense. But this particular photo is of two males fighting over a female. And what you can actually see is mid-fight, they've actually, as a defense mechanism, they shoot out ink. So that purple dust you see is actually ink. And the thing that I love about this photo is the eye of the top cuttlefish. You can just sort of see the struggle and pain, I suppose.
Yeah.
So, but they'll do a lot to battle over a wandering female.
Yeah. So you take that shot. Do you realize at the moment I got something special, or it's not until you get out and you're back home and you look on the screen? I mean, like, are there moments, well, I think I got something special?
Yeah, I mean, there are moments when I'm so happy that, like I said, I scream in my regulator underwater. I actually talk to myself. It's a bit mad if you can imagine it. But this photo, I sort of knew that I'd captured a special behavior moment.
Right.
And yeah, it was great. I'll keep going back every year. I'm sure I'll capture something great next year and the year after. It's
Yeah, and the weather outside, how does that affect going underneath?
Yeah.
To shoot? I mean, aside from actually, the sunlight and that, but is that beneficial in certain times? Is it like you're seeing it's raining, there's no reason to go?
Yeah, I mean, natural light in underwater photography is, I wouldn't say it's crucial, but it's quite important.
Yep.
Everyone wants to make use of natural light. We do have strobes, and strobes are quite important, even if you're diving at shallow depths, like 3, 4, 5 meters, just because you want to sort of light the underbelly of certain subjects. But it's always best if you have natural light, especially early in the morning when you get, I don't know if you know this terminology, but in underwater photography, we get something called dappled light.
Dappled light.
It's a very, very, you sort of only get 15 minutes of it at sunrise, sunset, where you get these beautiful rays dappling through, like with the turtle image we saw before. But yeah, natural light's extremely important. It's also really nice to have some sunlight when you come out of the water like this, because I mean you're diving in like 14 degrees Celsius water for about 3 hours at a time, so it's quite chilly.
Yeah, years ago I represented a still life photographer, and he would create that dappled light in the studio.
Oh, right.
With a grid, and he had a light certain products, whatever it was, and he would give me a lecture on dappled light.
Yeah.
Like it's just so just doing it, creating it is really really a task.
Well, I think just knowing about it, I don't think a lot of people know about dappled light.
Yeah.
And it's a natural element. It's there at your disposal if the sun's out and there's no clouds. So yeah, it's just about a matter of knowing about it and capturing it.
Right. Tell us.
So again, this is the same creature that we saw in the first shot. It's a leafy sea dragon, but I thought I'd try and capture it a little differently. I'm not sure if this was about 2 years after the first photo that I'd taken, same species.
That's it? All right, so let us finish. Okay.
But yeah, I used a slow shutter. So essentially, as photographers, we all know light freezes action. So, I've used a snoot, which is essentially like a spotlighted flash.
Right.
The snoot hits the part of the subject that I want to freeze, and then I'll use maybe a shutter speed of like a half a second, and then I'll move my camera and create that sort of that gliding movement that you get out of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. And do you recognize your style evolving as a, because that's something like we think about with, when people are shooting above ground portraits and lifestyle, whatever it is, and you think of your style.
Sure.
Right. How does that evolve for you?
Look, it's definitely evolved. I can't exactly tell you in what way. A lot of people tell me I have a style they can recognize when they see my photos.
Is that right? Okay.
I don't know that yet. What I do know is that it's changed. If I look at photos that I've taken, 2, 3, 4 years ago, it's definitely changed from that point on.
Right.
And we change with the times. Like slow shutter, in my opinion, right now it's outdated. I think last year, the year before, it was trending. And, we sort of, as photographers, we have to change with the times as well. And so our style evolves.
Great. Cool. I don't know if it's another one. Great.
Again, taken in Lady Elliot Island. This is during the whale migration. Beautiful moment, very rare in fact, between a mother and calf humpback whale. During their migration, they came into the island, for shelter and rest, and I was just able to capture this beautiful moment between mum and calf.
Great.
Yeah, seahorses, I'm obsessed with them, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Again, taken at Clifton Gardens. Using a snoot, I was able to sort of black the background out. This wasn't taken at night, but of course snoot has that majesty about it. And these are actually 2 courting seahorses. But again, because the lights sort of miss the midsection of the back seahorse, it creates this sort of optical illusion type photo. And if you look really closely, you can actually see a skeleton shrimp on the abdomen of the seahorse in the foreground. Honestly, I could talk about how this shot was executed for a while, so I'm not sure I can wrap it up. It's
Right.
very technically difficult to achieve, but I'll just wrap it up by saying this is one of the most unique seahorses I'd ever come across in my life.
Is that right?
Lightning bolts coming out of its eye. The green that you see, these are actually purple tulips, but they say in photography, light is everything. Light is also lack of light is also everything. So because the light source from my strobes is not hitting the purple tulips, all you're seeing is the water of the color of the water, which on that particular day was just this fluorescent high-vis green. And it's using a shallow depth of field, it creates this dream-like, smoke-like sort of, portrait of a potbelly seahorse.
Beautiful, beautiful. And do you sell prints?
I do, yes.
So people can go to your website and see all this information and...
Sure, yeah. If they visit taliagreisphotography.com or taliagreisphotography.com.au, they'll be able to see some prints or articles or, just enjoy underwater photography.
Great. That the last slide?
It is,
It is.
yeah.
So I can't thank you enough for doing this.
Thank you.
And we can't thank Xposure for giving us, this platform to let us chat, and being a winner of the Global Focus Project is...
It's a great honor. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and we're thrilled to allow us to use the stage.
Thank you
So
very
thank you
much.
very, very much.
Thank you.